Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this segment of One-on-One. I'm Martin Falls. Very pleased to have with us today a guest that has worn so many titles. We could call him a state legislator, we could call him a senator, we could call him a chairman, we could call him a director, we could call him many things, law enforcement. There's so many things, parish council. As I go on, I keep thinking of so many things that Reggie Dupre has done for our area. When we come back from the break, Reggie Dupre is my guest on One-on-One. One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer. We failed on the tax before.
Well, you failed in 2006. After
Yeah.
Katrina, we knew we had to do something big.
Yeah.
Wendell Curall would call me all the time with ideas. So Wendell would call me up. He said, after Katrina, he called me, he said, Reggie, he says, I need some help. I said, why? He says, all this money the federal government's sending to New Orleans, they're not sending us nothing. He says, we need to tax ourselves. And he says, Katrina scared me. He says, we need to start raising these levies and solid food. So I said, what you suggest? He says, I want you to file a local bill to give the solid food levy district up to 1 cent sale taxing authority. I says, okay. So then I hung up the phone, I called Jerome Sarang. I said, Z, you want me to file the same bill for Terrebonne levy district? Yes. Of course, this was like in 06. Well, solid foods put it on the ballot immediately and got like an 80% vote and passed it. That's how they were able to improve their system since Katrina. We didn't tap into that authority until like 2012.
You remember how much we lost by? I remember it like it was yesterday.
It was very close. So
200 votes, people say we lost by 200. No, we lost by 101.
101 would have...
101 would have flipped it, and we'd have had it.
Parish government put a 1 cent sale tax on the ballot in 06. It failed by 200 vote difference, and it was close. We pushed hard, and boy, we every time we got a setback, we'd figure out what's our next strategy. So then a year later, 2007, the federal government, Congress passes a word of bill, authorizes Morganza to the Gulf. We actually, I think you were in the room, we opened bottles of champagne that night in 07. Yeah. Big Brother's coming to save us all again. We got a federal project now. Well, if you remember, 6 or 8 weeks later, the Corps of Engineers calls us and says, well, because of the new post-Katrina design standards, we got to put you back in another study.
Yeah.
And
the big T's.
Yeah, it was big T's.
Everybody was crying in their milk.
Yeah. So anyway, so here you fast forward, the first major events after Katrina and Rita was Gustav and Ike. 3 years later, 2008. After Katrina, the state had 3 consecutive years of $1 billion plus surpluses, right? If you remember, you recall that?
Yeah.
I was there as the state senator, the dean of the delegation down here with my handout. I need money for my hurricane protection project. So
you were on coastal restoration.
Yeah.
You were the chair.
So anyway, so we got $100 million dedicated to Morganza, and then the old quarter-cent sale tax that passed, we ended up with $35 million. So you get to Gustav and Ike. Now, Tony Alford became president of Levy District from his first day back in 04, and he kept pushing. If you remember on the time for action, he said, we going to do this on our own if y'all not going to do it.
I patted him on the back and I said, amen.
Yeah.
Now go do it.
No, everybody was saying, no, there's no way. But actually, the catalyst for us really moving heavy on our own was Gustav and Ike. The federal government had us in this big study. We didn't know how long we will be waiting on them. Thousands of homes flooded again. We had 11,000 flood for 05. Yeah. About 3,000 or 4,000 homes flooded in 08 for Rita. For these hurricanes for Ike.
Ike and Gustav.
So then that's when Tony made the statement and started calling. I was a senator at the time. He called me, he called the congressman and Chamber of Commerce. He made the circle and says, we need to start building this thing on our own. We're not going to survive otherwise. in 2008, also early '08, is when Governor Jindal and Garrett Graves hired Jerome Zerang to work in Baton Rouge as CPRA. And Wendell Curall became the interim director. So after Gustav and Ike, Wendell called Tony Alford and me. I took a very big interest of Morganza to the Gulf as the local senator and trying to get them money. So he called the two of us. He says, y'all gonna have to find somebody else. This is too big of a job for one person to be over both parishes on hurricane protection. And we got way too much to do. So then Tony and I went on this hunt. I'd come up with a name, we'd call him up, or he'd come up with an idea, then he'd get turned down. I remember one first name I thought about was Ted Fagu. Ted was fixing to retire from Port Fourchon.
Yeah.
I called Ted, said, Ted, you want to go to work as the director of Terrebonne Levee District? He says, are you crazy? You think I want to go to work at this age? I'm fixing to retire. Then he hung up on me. So I called Tony back. I say, well, scratch Ted off the list. You know, we went through several people. So after about 3 days of this, Tony calls me up. He says, I got the perfect person to be the next director of the Levee District. I said, who would that might be? He said, you.
Yeah.
I say, hold on now. You know that's a conflict of interest. I'd have to resign my elected Senate seat. Then he started the sales pitch. He said, well, how much you love Terrebonne Parish? He says, obviously you love your home parish. Yes, I do. And he says, you get to come and implement all those policies you passed. You get to spend that money you raised plus some more and build something. So I said, okay, well, I decided to do it, but I told him I wouldn't do it until after the legislative session, so we waited till mid-09, and that's been 15 years ago.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
Now, if you look at my 43 years of public service, you know, deputy sheriff and all the elected offices and all, there's no, you know, you 7 years as a deputy, 8 years parish council, a little over 5 years as a rep, eight and a half as a senator, 15 levee district director. There's only one thing I've done in my life that's exceeded 10 years, and that's where I am now at the levee district, and I'm, you know, fixing to retire very shortly. So I got to give a shout out to Tony Alford. I mean, he convinced me to resign, gave me my final mission, public mission, and it's been great. So like the three locally here in Terrebonne, the three local coastal amigos is Gordon Dove, Tony Alford, and I. And now I can honestly say, you know the old statement, the student has surpassed the teacher? That's exactly what has happened. I mean, if you remember, Gordy Dove got elected in '03 by 5 votes.
Landslide Dove.
Landslide Dove. And then the Monday after the election, he calls me up. He said, Reggie, I've been watching the delegation. I like your priorities. I like the way you handle yourself. And you would teach me how to be a lawmaker. He says, what's your top priority? He asked me. I said, hurricane protection, Morganza to the Gulf, and coastal restoration. He said, me too. He says, I really love barrier island work. We need to do that. Plus, you know, we need to protect ourselves. So yeah, I'm very pleased to get a partner in progress. So we started working together, and then couple of months later, Tony gets he nominates Tony Alford to be his designee.
Good choice too.
Yeah, on the levee district.
Tony's a bulldog.
Then there was a little split back then on who was going. There was a 4-4 split on who's going to be the next president of the levee district. So Gordy calls me up. I got a suggestion. I said, what's that? He says, let's put in some new blood. Why don't we try Tony Alford as president? I says, I'm in. So we supported that, and then Tony got the nod, and he put the two factions together and kept moving forward, and it's been fantastic.
Tony cannot accept no for an answer.
That's right.
And I've always said this to the public. I mean, I've watched it. I mean, because, you know, people say, well, why were you so involved with levees? I say, because I live here.
Yeah.
It's really, an easy question, but I watched y'all move, and I'm gonna say y'all legacies is, your legacies are broader than levees and water control structures, but that's how y'all gonna be remembered.
Right,
I mean,
right.
let's face it, all the other things y'all did, people are gonna forget, but when they see the big levee system,
How it started.
that's where y'all gonna be.
And had we
Yeah.
not started on our own, with Tony pushing so hard in those early days, we would have not had the federal government come in, because once they finally authorized us in 2014, it was over $10 billion. There's no way that Office of Management and Budget in Washington was going to approve a new start for a $10 billion project for 200,000 people.
Yeah.
The economics didn't make sense. But once we got them to look at our successes and what we built in the last few years, they started we got our first federal money. So now, I mean, you start adding it up, it's mind-boggling. Non-federal side, if you add up, about $300 million was put in truly local tax money to Terrebonne Levee District and the voters of Terrebonne on the taxes and the bonding and refinancing when it was right to do it. And then the state, just like Governor Foster offered me so long ago, 23 years ago,
Yeah.
when he about skin in the game, the state has come up with almost the equal amount of money. So that's
Yeah.
300 million and 300 million, $600 million.
So skin in the game was the big term, and just to say, a lot of people think Bobby Jindal, because Gordy raised a lot of money
Oh,
for
yes.
Jindal and he got it back, but I got to give some credit to Governor Edwards too.
Oh yeah, Governor
Because,
Edwards.
yeah, he gave a lot of money to Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish.
He did, and look, he only had 33%.
John Bell Edwards, just so they don't
John
get
Bell,
confused with Edwin. Yeah.
Right. But you're right. I mean, every governor, Mike Foster was so correct. Every governor after him continued to recognize.
If you show that you're going to put your own money in it and
That's
you're
right.
committed, they will give it back. So look what happens now is we got about 4 minutes left. Gordy's in charge of CPRA. You're going out, but you're going to be a consultant in one way or the other. I'm not going to sit here. I mean, I promise you, somebody's going to ask you, and I promise you, you're going to accept, because you can't just, it's not like Against All Odds. When Jim
Right.
Bridges walked away, I'm going, the movies don't end like that. For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. What do you plan on doing when you retire?
Well, I had commit. So Angela Hidalgo is going to be taking my place. I've been training her. She's been more on the accounting side for the last.
And she'll
15
do
years.
great.
And of course, she'll do great with Tony still as the president. I'm glad he's staying on at least another term. And having Gordy and Baton Rouge as the chairman, that's going to really help, because you don't have to go and draw a map and go meet with the chairman up there and say, oh, we got this little levy here, we got this thing we need. All you got to do is call them and say, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
They get it. They
get it. So I think that's going to be a big, big benefit. What I'm going to do is probably, I told Angela, I'll keep a cell phone, a laptop, very, very limited, offline. I said, I'm not going to do like window cure-all. I'm not going to hang out in the rafters of the levee district. You only can have one person as a director, and you can't have two people in charge.
But you will be there if she needs you.
Yes, right. And then if there's some court cases or whatever, I may have to come back and testify. So, I'm planning on doing a lot of traveling. Of course, I'm the owner of Berg Supermarket also, and my long-term retirement plans depend on whether I keep the store or somebody buys it. I got one guy that's interested in buying it, but who knows? We're not going to know for several weeks from now.
If I ask you, what was your best day as a public official? Well, and I know it's narrowing that down.
Oh, Lord,
after
that's
40-some years. But what's your most accomplished thing that happened with you at the helm?
I think after Katrina, when I had earned the trust of Governor Blanco, and I was requested to handle the very, very major public policy changes. Creation of CPRA was my bill. I mean, this kid from Pointe-a-Chat who's unknown goes up to Baton Rouge and does these very big landmark policy changes which will carry on for generations. I think that's probably it.
Which Gordy now?
Right, and then Gordy's now the chairman, yeah.
He's in charge of about a $2 billion budget, I think, somewhere around there, 1.8. We'll round it off.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are all good, major, big decisions. But as you ride off into the sunset, what's your favorite music? When you go be in your motorhome traveling somewhere, what are you going to listen to?
Probably yacht rock radio or country, either one of those two. And but you know, we go do a lot of traveling with motorhome. I'm planning a couple of month trip later this year.
Yeah.
Because I never could travel during hurricane season because I have to be here.
I've always told people I sure would like to watch a hurricane from a lounge chair somewhere instead of being on a news desk. You the same way.
Oh, yeah.
You got to be, how many times were you on the news desk with me?
Oh, yeah. We out with a raincoat on and the wind blowing 50 miles an hour? And
well, it was, going back to Hurricane Juan, just want to take a little time to thank you.
Thank you.
For all your service that you've done for the area. And God, I've seen you all the way through. So as I continue in my TV world, I look up, I see different factions, different players.
Right.
I see Gordy, different arena. Still see Tony. We got new parish presidents, got Jason Badger on there, so I see new faces coming in there. You've been a mainstay all the way through. But every now and then I'm going to have to pick up a phone and say, what you think about this, Reggie? You're going to say, well, I'm in Wyoming in my motorhome. I'll call you back. So
well, I did something this last weekend I have been putting off for a long time. I signed up for Facebook 12, 13 years ago, and then I got scared. And I said, man, I ain't got time for this. And so I never did it. So this weekend I said, well, now that I'm retiring, at least to stay in touch with the locals, to see what's going on. That seems to be the new way of getting information and finding out what's going on.
That's why we put all our shows on Facebook and YouTube. Final question. If I went to everyone and I said, Reggie's had a diverse career, going all the way from point A to point Z. One word I want you to describe Reggie's career, his enthusiasm for what he did. And I got them all in a room and they handed me a consensus. And they gave me a sheet with one word on it. What would you hope the one word would be?
Persistent.
Persistent's a good word. Yeah. Your mama told you a long time ago, don't forget your people.
That's right.
And you honored your mama.
That's right.
So, amen on that. And you became your dad.
Yeah, well.
People came to you for advice.
That's true. That's true.
Reggie, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more, but thank you for what you've done for the parish.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Good to see you. For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.